I officially call the meeting to order. Is the meeting been properly posted and the roll been taken?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 2 is approval of minutes. 2.1 or approval of the minutes of September 5th, 2023 meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of September 5th, 2023.
Second, the motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 3 are communications. Communications at this time. So item number 4 is a public hearing to review possible recommendation for the city of Delavan. 4.1, it's a public hearing on a request to amend the city of Delavan zoning ordinance, which involves creating section 23.206, parent A, parent Y for the short-term rental land uses applicant again, the city of Delavan. So with that, we would open up the public hearing at this time.
Since there's no one here, I can provide an overview of the proposed amendment. So this is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding short-term rentals. This is in response to a act of state legislature that occurred in 2017, sometimes called the right to rent law. This basically means that the state is prohibiting local governments from prohibiting short-term rentals in any legal dwelling unit. So basically, the city has to allow short-term rentals in any legal dwelling unit for periods of 7 or up to 29 days. I think the idea from the state legislature was that people should be able to make use of their property as they see fit, with some guardrails put on it by the local government. As you guys have probably heard, this is having some negative impacts on a lot of communities, particularly Lake Geneva and Door County, where those are tourist communities, because they're actually seeing a lot of single-family homes go over to short-term rental almost full-time. This hasn't really been a big issue in Delavan, fortunately, and so that's why we haven't immediately responded to the new legislation. But staff felt like this is the time to start updating the zoning code so that we, one, aren't out of compliance with the state law, but then also under state law, the city is allowed to build in requirements and require a license and collect room tax on these types of uses. And so these amendments allow the city to do that. You'll see in the staff report, there are a number of different requirements that the city would request of individuals who want to have a short-term rental in their home. As you can see, it's floor plan, site plan, showing that they have sufficient parking. You do have to get a state license if you're doing short-term rental. Additionally, you'll see in here that we are enforcing the rental terms within the limits of the state law. So that means basically it has to be at least a 7-day rental period, so no 2-day rental or a weekend rental to become a longer short-term rental, if that makes sense. And then we are eliminating to 29 days per rental period, and then 180 days per calendar year, regardless of what renters are renting the home. You'll see we also have limitations on outdoor activities after 10 p.m. to minimize the effects on the neighboring properties. Happy to answer any questions about the requirements, but these are pretty tested and true regulations that we've seen used in other communities.
Any questions?
I've got a couple. My first question is, what's our legislative objective?
So I think the main thing is to ensure that if the city wishes to control the short-term rentals, that we are building in requirements in the code to control them, because the state law does allow us to do that. And so ensuring that if we have to allow these, we are at least regulating them so they're not impacting the neighborhood surrounding them.
Okay, and so one is making sure that they're not negatively impacting other property owners' use. Is that what you meant by impact?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other things that we're legislating for? Are we, because
Mhm.
in a lot of communities, there's concern about, providing, about the impact of short-term rental on economic value of single-family homes, consequently increasing overall prices of single-family homes. Are we attempting to influence that also?
I don't think so.
Okay. The reason that I think that's important to understand is, I think in the city of Delavan, we've seen an impact on single-family home conversion to full-time rental, on prices. And I just wanted to understand because the 180-day limit, is the maximum, I guess, the minimum maximum we're allowed to regulate, but we made a decision to make it contiguous, right? That we said 180 days in a row. So a rental, a short-term rental owner has to identify the 180-day window he or she are gonna operate in, the way it's written,
Yes.
right?
Right.
The legislation, when I read it, said, that a municipality could do it that way. We could also do it another way, right? And so I just wondered whether or not you thought about exploring it another way.
I hadn't looked into that, no.
Because obviously in our marketplace, the 180 days one would choose would be the 180 days bordering summer, right?
For sure.
So, and you can't say it has to be 180 days between, January and February and then October, November, December,
Mhm.
according to the legislature. But you could say 180 days with no continuous months. So you could say, and so then a landlord an operator could choose. Okay, well, I want May, July, September, or I want. And so we didn't talk about that.
I haven't looked at that.
Right.
no.
So that's all right. That's all right. I don't think it probably matters, but when we're writing,
Mhm.
I think that'd be hard to please. And Jackie, just clarification, if someone wanted to rent their house out year round, can they also apply for as a vacation rental home as a conditional use permit?
Yeah, so the city has a number of other short-term rental, like lodging, like land use categories. We do have a vacation rental land use category. Not everybody would be eligible for that. You'd have to
Right.
be in one of the business zoning districts, but that would be oriented to kind of a full-time rental.
so that's the reference. I mean, there's a confusing reference in Florida. C4, similar facilities in which single-family detached homes are available for less than 7 days, more than 180 days, or throughout the year are not considered short-term rental land uses in the definition of the ordinance, right? And instead shall be regulated either as vacation rental homes or commercial indoor lodging uses. And my question was, how do we decide what similar facilities are regulated in a way? And the answer is on this table, right?
Right, that's what I would say. I would say if somebody's proposing to do rentals, we'd have to understand
So-
what their operation is and then determine which
But-
land use it
But,
falls under.
but if I understand the table on page 12, right? If I'm operating a vacational rental home or a commercial indoor lodging short-term rental, I have to be in these zoning districts, is that
That's
correct?
correct. Mhm.
Right, so you can't be in our R districts and do that.
Correct.
Right. Except commercial indoor lodging is permitted in all districts where residential is allowed.
Say that again?
Yeah, go to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just need you to repeat what you said.
Okay, it says commercial indoor lodging, short-term rental. Oh, I'm sorry, I lost the gray line because,
That's what I thought.
well, my eyes, my glasses don't work as well. So we don't have to worry about that, right?
Sorry, what's the question?
So if I read this to begin with and didn't have your table, right,
Mhm,
I would contend 4 is ambiguous,
mhm,
right? And I'd say, how come you can discriminate against me from having a short-term rental
mhm.
and other people are allowed to have less than 7 days or more than 180 days, right?
Mhm.
And so, you would say, yeah, but you didn't understand that vacation rental home or commercial indoor lodging land uses are in specific zoning districts.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it, right? Is our other legislative objective to make sure the people who own these units are local?
No, well. No. And really the intention is with the 180-day limit is that they
No,
should be
I'm
living.
moving on to a different one.
No, I understand, but we don't really address, there's nothing in here about that.
Right, so we said the designated operator must reside within or have their business located within 25 miles of short-term
I stand
rental.
corrected, we do have that in there.
So is our legislative objective that only local owners can do this?
The objective was to be able to have someone who could respond if there was an issue with the property.
Okay, so let's just talk about the definition of business located. Right, so if I'm a Denver, Colorado real estate investor and I determine that owning homes in Delavan is profitable part-time, short-term rental business for me. The way I deal with this is my LLC that owns that house has that house's address.
Mhm. You're saying you can work around it easily.
I have a strange level of knowledge of addresses in the city of Delavan because I prepared the annual meeting notice for the Lake Combs district, okay? And, as Andy will testify from the city of Delavan's perspective, there are probably 10% of the residents, 10% of the addresses in the city of Delavan are property tax billing addresses with LLCs that might be here or might be someplace else. So business located means my LLC's formal address is within 25 miles.
Or you could have just own a business here, rent out the business, and you could then have your business here. So to me, you're almost favoring those that have more money than those that could just want to rent out their individual home. I know what you were trying to do.
We stole the language out of our current landlord licensing program, which is the same issue.
Oh, okay.
We need to be able to have someone, if there's an issue, show up.
So I've seen other municipalities, not in the state of Wisconsin, say that the designated operator must provide a contact or a manager who is accessible within 24 hours. And I think that might be a better way to get to what your objective is. Because that's your objective, right?
Right, yes.
So I have 2 other questions. I'm sorry, Ryan.
There are a couple of them. Go ahead.
So, section D, 2C. All guest vehicles and trailers must park on site.
Mhm.
And then we'd say appropriately, elsewhere that you can't. A note on 3D, no recreational vehicle, camper, tent, or temporary lodging arrangement shall be permitted to accommodate guests, right? Why don't we just prohibit trailers?
I think if we prohibited trailers, you would eliminate somebody that's traveling cross-country and wants to stop for 7 days or longer, and they happen to be using one home or something else like that, that they're using,
Or somebody pulling a boat.
or somebody,
Yeah.
yeah. Just as a thought.
Okay, then, I would, even though I know it's part of our ordinances, I think it might be better to clarify when you say your parking requirement is a minimum of 2 off-street parking places shall be provided, right? And you say they should be covered, right? We might clarify that that does not include the sidewalk and apron, right?
Yeah, we really wouldn't want people parking there.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't want citizens parking there either, but we don't enforce it. So if somebody parks a trailer, right, does that count as a vehicle? Well, so we're writing a law, right? We don't say probably, and we don't say enforce, yeah, we'll see. The last question I have, on, E3. Okay, the whole point is to regulate an activity, right? We say, we've identified, Knox box systems as, our way to deal with access, right? To rental property, emergencies or whatever, right? Why do we say, that we encourage them instead of require them?
We borrowed this language from another community, and that was the question as to whether we could require them to have a Knox box.
Okay, so we can require them to have fire suppression.
That's in the code.
Right. So this is, but this is,
Well, fire suppression, no, but they have to have fire extinguisher, correct?
A fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, that's what I would,
But-
the fire suppression.
we're writing the same, I'm sorry. This ordinance would have the same level of a municipal building code, and when are we requiring it?
I have a suggestion. I think the purpose of that is to get access if we need it from the city point of view.
From the fire
From
department.
the fire department point of view.
Knox box is all fire departments.
It's only fire department.
So what happens if Knox box goes bankrupt, or that becomes a different
That's not the
something
point.
like that?
The point is, we state in the legislative objective that we've identified that as our point of access process. And if that's our point of access process, we should require it. Especially if we're concerned about owners absent and giving us permission. We have a paragraph in front of it that talks about, you may not allow us inspection rights. You need to understand if we don't have inspection rights, we're going to, do other things, right?
We can't use that Knox box till we get it, that's only for fire department.
No, but I'm talking about, my point is, the intent of the language should be,
Currently, all commercial structures that have a sprinkler system have to have a Knox box.
right,
But if it's not sprinkler, they're not required to have a Knox box.
but these people are asking for special permissions.
If you'd like to have that in there, that is completely up to you. The fire department was okay with with this language.
Because they have access.
They're not fools, they don't care about a key.
But my point is, if you're, we're saying these people are a lodging form, right? And we wanna regulate them as a lodging form, we wanna control a bunch of stuff related to whether they have 24-hour managers. So we're comfortable telling them they have to have certain staffing, but we're not comfortable telling them that they have to have or are required to have a device that allows us access in case of fire.
I guess I would just say the fire department did not feel that that was required for this language.
Okay, fine.
I'm sure they'd be happy if you wanted to require them to have it. More than they. Yeah, I'm not gonna use it anyway.
I've got a few questions. Well, first of all, let's step back, because just for clarity, because I think I heard you say, so anyone watching this later, obviously, this is a state legislative law. The best we can do is try to make it the best for our city limits and our community and what we feel. So it's not like we can't allow this, period, because obviously they've been doing, so I just want to make that clear that if people are watching later or contact us later after something goes through, that, you know, why would you allow this? Our hands are kind of tied, other than making it fit. Again, what we feel is that's certainly, so that's one. Two, for me, Kevin said the key word, enforcement. It always comes down to enforcement, obviously, and so my questions would be, how do we know, they're in the program, first of all? Like, if everyone does what they're supposed to do, and they're a good player, then we know, because they do everything that's in these conditions, and they get their permit through the state, and then they get their room tax permit and all that stuff, but how do we know? Because I'll be honest, like a few years ago, when this first started, I was totally surprised to hear that, which is not one of the addresses that we've identified through the state, but there was a home along Walworth Avenue that was doing it, probably the first one that did it, and it was going on for years, and none of us knew it. And so obviously we weren't capturing any type of room tax, we didn't have, and you know, I don't think there was many complaints, if anything. They're not on the list now, because as I understand, I'm pretty certain that it's back in private ownership and it's not being used for this. But that'd be my one question, how do we know if they're for sure in the program? Two, who's doing the enforcement actually of the 7 days or the 180 days? Who's tracking that? Like, oh, they went, all of a sudden they went 181 days and they should have only done 180. And then again, the room tax revenue that, I mean, obviously they're supposed to get a room tax revenue permit, but those were my questions. Is it's not so much about this, but it's kind of like a rummage sale. You're only supposed to have a rummage sale so many times a year, and then we get the same people having an antique sale or a rummage sale or what have you. It always comes down to enforcement. So those were my questions. Is I don't know if staff is identified or has any ideas.
I mean, I think in my experience, it is kind of like the rummage sale situation, where we're trying to stop the worst behavior. And we, of course, want to have a record of these for health and safety reasons, and we want to encourage people to do the right thing. I think there are going to be some that slip through the cracks.
Yeah, I can say that I know Shannon every month gets something from Walworth County, but that would still be the people that are registering through the county. So the people that aren't registering at all, the only way staff would really catch them is either complaint basis or online when they get great reviews from people and then they tell us that they're not doing it. So really online is how you get most of it. People kind of tell on themselves, but staff would have to look for that, which I think we do an okay job for that, because like I said, we're not like Lake Geneva, we don't have a ton of them, but depending upon what happens around here, we're just kind of trying to get ahead of the game a little bit. But when it comes to the enforcement of like your 181st day, I can tell you, I probably would be very hard for me to know that. It's gonna be more of, hey, these people are renting their house out, they're having parties and the neighbors are complaining, and that's when the city can step in if we already have all this stuff set up, and then they would obviously be monitored a little more closely, but if people aren't calling into the police or whatever, if there's issues. Because the other thing, a lot of this usually happens on the weekend, and so most of the staff is not around on the weekends either, so it'd really be complaint driven for us to find most of this.
Is it appropriate to put something in the condition that if we find out that you didn't go through the appropriate steps to do things the right way, and then we catch?
There's a penalties and license revocation thing on here that they get a daily fine for violation of section 98 and 936.
Which one is that?
Toward the bottom
Oh, I didn't. Oh,
penalty, it's F.
okay, yeah, I didn't see one. Oh, yeah, okay. Kevin, did you have
Well,
something?
what I was gonna say to you, Ryan, is that there's all kinds of provisions in here about the record keeping that they must provide, right?
Mhm.
One of the ways that, given that we don't wanna police it, which is what I just heard from staff, right? We wanna police exceptions. What we could do is require, instead of just maintenance of the documents, we could require the owner to present the documents to the city staff at some interval.
You could do it yearly or after the 180 days.
Right, or I mean, we might choose seasonal time, we might say every September 30th, an owner has to present those documents. Right, or something, I mean, cause all it says is that, I mean, it's the same kind of stuff, it says you gotta keep them until a year after the business is over. Is the way I read it. Right, and, good. All of us keep a bunch of documents that we know nobody's gonna look at unless something bad happens, right? I mean, my point is, if we want to enforce this ordinance because we think the legislative purpose is to prevent inappropriate renting in the community, then we should potentially build into it something that says the owner must present and have reviewed by somebody, something.
I agree.
I know, I'm just talking.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have two questions. Is it possible for the owner to sublet this property as well? There's a section in there that talks about maximum occupants for bedrooms plus two per bedroom plus two extras. So if a 3-bedroom home was there, that could be up to 12 people. If they were subletting it, that could be each individual room is listed as part of the bed and breakfast. And then you could go from room to room to room.
I haven't given that any thought.
Kevin, did you know?
Because it would be
Well,
like.
what I was gonna point out to Matt is there's a 4-bedroom, you can go on Airbnb and look at a 4-bedroom listing that identifies 11 potential residents.
Sure.
In the city of Delavan along the Walworth Avenue course, so I mean, I don't know how you deal with a sublet argument for people who are turning it into, let's all throw $100 in for a week in Delavan.
So it was an example of like a 3-bedroom house.
Or a 4-bedroom or
and
larger,
Each one room is considered its own unit.
essentially turning it into something similar to a hostel.
We have to look at that. They would have to meet the parking requirements. So 12 people were. There have to be 2 parking spaces per unit. So there were 4 bedrooms and that'd be 8 parking spaces they need to provide on site. So they might get limited by that, but we could take a closer look on that, at that. I haven't seen that much in communities I work from, but it could happen.
Any other questions? Anyone else would speak on this issue at this time? All I would ask is that you come up to the podium and so that we're recording it, so it comes through a little
Okay,
easier. So if you could just come up and state your name and
All right. I'm Karen Smith and I live on McDowell Street. And I've been here for the other couple of meetings that they've had. And actually, Heather printed this out for me, so I want you to know that she was very helpful. So I had a chance to read it while I was having my procedure. I thought it was done very well for the most part. And I thought the 7-day thing was good. Who monitors this? And you're gonna have to have staff when all these papers come in, if you wanna look at them and see where they're here for. And there was somebody brought a question up about, well, they can say they're there for a week, but technically they're only there for the weekend. So how do you really catch that? And I think I left you a message today about taxes, school benefits. That when you have families living here and in the community and they're invested in this, then there is federal monies that go for students that go there. Now, you can have elderly, but you could have elderly who have grandchildren living with them going to school. And when you have families living in these homes, rental, they're doing business within the city. And I don't see that much business coming from this. So the monitoring is an issue, documenting the reviews. You already had an example where it went on and nobody really even knew about it. And that's what's gonna happen here. Cause you have all these potentials for the doors. And I know when we had those 10 boys or whatever out there, that was way more than, so now I don't know how they get by with it, because my mind doesn't quite work that way, but I know it can be, it can get around all these rules that you have. Cars, we've had big trailers, and the only thing I could think of is they were construction or something that was there. They might have been out of town doing work, so they stayed at the house next door. So they had huge trucks parking, house next door. But what is the benefit really to the city other than the state doing this? And then when I went online, I did see, which isn't us, but it's United States, Austin, Texas, trying to do it. Why did you ever, that come up? Okay. How they're, don't want them is the way I was reading it. They don't want them. So if this is a state, just a state, Wisconsin, or not? All the state.
That's where I was getting at with my comments earlier, is that people can do it. I mean, it's not a matter of we're allowing them to do it or not do it. What we have as a planning commission, and ultimately the council and staff, is to work within the confines to make it so it's not a nuisance to you or anyone else in the community and all that. So I don't know if there's any confusion there, that's why I wanted our staff to speak to clarify that it's not a matter of we can do this or we can't do it. It's how can we make it better, because it's gonna go on and
Okay.
unless the state changes it.
Okay, and then I noticed that it also said there are 5 of them listed that are here, but that the room tax or whatever it is hasn't been collected yet. So it's quarterly though, right? Or do you just quarterly adds up and you collect it at the end of the year, or you collect it quarterly? Am I reading it right?
Room taxes are supposed to be submitted on a quarterly basis.
Okay, but none have been collected yet.
According to the city treasurer, that is correct.
Okay. So that's another monitor issue. And so the benefit to the city, I'm not getting the benefit to the city.
we're trying to make it better with what the state told us we have to do. I mean, the state came down with this law and we have to, within the restrictions that they placed on the city, we're trying to make it so it's more palatable for everybody.
Okay. Okay, then the tracking, who does track all of this? The staff, where it's kind of almost like the IRS is gonna be looking for all these papers. Which I thought was kind of a neat idea, but who wants to do that? I mean, who's going to do that, staff wise? And that's a whole nother position, probably,
Certainly more work.
yeah. Yeah, so I would like to see the paperwork on it, especially, so how do they get around? They have to have it for 7 days, but they only are there for a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So how do you get around that? You do get around it. I mean,
They book it for the week, but they're only there for 4 days, they're paying for the whole week.
well, or are they? Are they really paying for 3 nights? But they say that's what the week price is. So how do you catch them on that?
It's up to the person that sets the rates, the person who owns the property.
Well, and there's your catch. The way to get through with it. You can set up that law that it has to be a minimum of 7 days, but he still gets his 3 nights, which is all he was gonna get anyway. So. That's all. I did think I thought all of this was good. A lot of it, some of it I didn't understand. But can it be a voting issue? Can it be a referendum on the next vote?
With it being a state law, it's a state law, unless they tweak or change something at the state legislature.
The best part for you right now is to contact your local representative and the state senator.
Oh,
Because we can't stop it. This is already in place. There are just no restrictions. We're attempting to put some restrictions that are gonna be beneficial to the community in place.
okay, all right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thanks for your message, I did get it earlier today, so I appreciate that, I know you're gonna attending a few of these meetings, so.
Right,
Anyone else?
I have two more questions.
Sure.
You haven't seen any municipality that's been able to identify in their ordinance that the 7-day rental requires occupancy, right?
Occupancy by whom? Like,
The renters.
I'm not sure what you mean.
So if I rent it for 7 days, I have to occupy it for 7 days. Have you
Oh,
seen
it has to be
any-
7 days. That's what you're saying.
Right.
I don't think you can.
No, I'm just asking if she's seen.
I haven't seen anybody figure that one out.
Okay, have you seen any place, can we require, the rental reporting? So I have a rental, I have to report it to the municipality,
Yes,
okay? So that provision, could we activate that provision that, short-term rental, landlord has to report on transaction, the future rental of their property?
I think that's what we're trying to capture with the annual.
No, I'm saying, so, I get an Airbnb rental confirmation. At the point I have the rental confirmation, I have to report it to the municipality.
Oh, the renter.
No. The owner is the
Individual
is the
transaction.
counterparty, right? So
Mhm.
the owner, can he or she be required to, or did,
Mhm.
in most instances, be required to,
Notify.
report it?
This weekend, I'm renting this 7-day period, I'm renting my property, I need to notify the
Right.
city. I think we could require that, I haven't seen.
I
that.
think we should investigate that.
That would help with tracking.
Certainly, yeah.
From a room
Well,
test.
I mean, so the legislative objective is to make it harder. Okay? That's what you guys have said. You haven't wanted to say it, but you've said it. So let's be honest about how you make it harder. You make it easier to track. ensure that the maximum regulation periods that the state has provided are the ones we're gonna do. And then reporting or paperwork is the other regulation that makes things harder. So if you wanna make it harder, then you say, at the point that you get a rental, you have to report it to the city.
I think it's up to you guys if you wanna make it harder. I don't feel that this is, the main legislative objective of this document is to make it harder. I think it's to prevent negative impacts on neighbors and to have the city be able to track these and know where they are in case of, for room tax reasons, and for public health and safety reasons.
There's a lot of value in having that sync with, the actual contract. If someone is coming in and saying they want to do that, if we have a system in place where they just file it and then we track it internally, and that's just a print off that we can do afterwards, that minimizes what we have to do in terms of the office, and we can just check it quarterly. And then we could take that and use that as a metric to factor room tax. So I see value in that in terms of efficiency.
I have no problem with this. I'm just making sure you guys understand the purpose of this.
I am curious about what we can do about people that try and get around this by not registering and just don't let us know, and we find out years afterwards. Is there a way that we can retroactively charge them for room tax? Is there a way that we can assign room tax to property values in terms of taxes? Is there a way we can put a lien on it? Is there a way we can do any of that?
There's nothing in the state law about this that would prohibit that. You might want to talk to the city attorney about a kind of retroactive ability to issue citations, but I think we could. It's not something we've looked at.
So I don't think my, request is too difficult, right? So how does occupancy tax collection and remittance work by Airbnb? We automatically collect and pay occupancy tax on behalf of hosts whenever a guest pays for booking in specific jurisdictions. So we have to we have to register our jurisdiction with Airbnb. And they provide the reports. They tell you who's coming, when they were there, and pay the taxes. So I think we require people to pay their taxes through the Airbnb feature or similar rental feature.
Good.
This is still part of public comments, right?
Yes.
Anyone else wish to speak on this issue at this time?
I have a question on C11, on payment, monetary amount or consideration paid for the rental. What is, I don't understand that.
I think it's saying, how much they're charging for the rental. And consideration is can be used as a word, like how much money they're charging.
Okay.
I had a quick,
Sure.
I think we had, especially Commissioner Armstrong had a number of different suggestions. But I think staff needs clarity on which ones are going to be added to the revised zoning amendments. Do we just want to go with all those suggestions, or is there further discussion? I don't feel like I have clear direction on.
Yeah, I was gonna close the public hearing and then we get into.
But one question I have, is there some of those questions we needed some answers on though? Is this something that we're gonna wanna table until next month? So we can get the answers on it so we can get the ordinance correct?
I think, as I recall, there were some, I agree with you, but I think it sounded like we needed to investigate a little bit more, but at a basic level that we want, so I don't know how, I mean, what was your take on it? Because I thought you yourself needed to maybe dig into a couple of these, and I know there was the one reference to our city attorney, get an opinion from the city attorney and so.
One thing I had written down was, there's an idea to have them submit something annually. I don't know if we need to look into how that procedure would work, that's kind of outside of my area. What the, kind of operations side of that would be at City Hall. We had asked about requiring them to report back to the city when they book with Airbnb. I don't know if we need to do research on that one, that one's pretty easy. I had asked about, if we could retroactively, if we find out someone's been doing rentals for years, if we had any recourse, that would need to be researched on.
Well, as well as moving forward with somebody that's just not paying their room tax.
Oh,
Require registration, room tax. Payment directly from their. Representative, be it Airbnb or others.
Well,
I have a couple others that I just wanna make sure are collected, right, on, P4. Or unless you wanna do
Oh,
it differently.
I was just thinking, I mean, I'm open to suggesting, but I was gonna propose, if there was no other comments, then we can move on and have, some.
Okay.
But Mark, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, I guess if the plan commission wants to let Jackie know which, if any of those suggestions you want language included within this draft, would be, provide that information and then take no action on this item, and we'll bring it back at a future agenda once we've researched those and come up with language.
And I'm fine with that too. So I think there does need to be a little more clarity from what I'm hearing on some of these, but some of these are.
And so I wanna say first, I congratulate us that we're ahead. Right, because I've watched too many communities deal with this from, so if we're gonna collect these now before we move to not act. The other one I would think we wanna talk about is, C8, where instead of it being, have their business located within X, we say provide like a 24-hour property manager who can be, reached by city or short-term renter, something like that. And then as it pertains, to, D2, the parking requirements, right? 2 off-street parking spaces within property boundaries. If garages are included, they must be available to users. Trailers are included or something like that. Those are the cover notes, Jackie, that I didn't hear.
yeah, something like don't park in the apron, I'm remembering now.
And I just think we do need to research the point, which I think is gonna be that I'm gonna raise it, but we're gonna find out it doesn't matter that. We can do 7-day rental requirement, but we can't require the renter to occupy the unit, right? I mean, it's the same as I buy my house full time and nobody can expect that I live there all the time. So. But we should at least follow through. And then I would ask staff to consider if you want to, and given our tourist basis of these potential rentals, the 180-day consecutive rental period I'm comfortable with, but if you were to, if the legislative goal was to restrain it, then you would not do that, right? You'd say 180 days of 30 days, non-contiguous.
So let me just make sure I've got this correct.
So, I'm sorry, I come from a condo association that doesn't want people to rent stuff in in Florida, right? And so one of the ways you deal with it is minimum rental periods, right? And the other way you deal with it is to make it so that owners can't rent during prime period.
Mhm.
And the law says 180 days. It doesn't say 180 days contiguously, it says you can do 180 days contiguously. You could do 180 days in 30-day blocks, non-contiguously. So it's January, March, May,
Oh, stagger them.
right? I mean, but the whole issue is, what is the legislative objective? I vote against it. That's why I asked what the legislative objective was, right? But,
Does that give you a little more clarity
Well,
on some of the
it
things?
says-
And-
Okay, so the language says that the 180 days must be consecutive right now in the draft.
Right.
And that's what we want, right?
I don't know what we want. Because no one answered what the legislative objective was, other than that the state allowed us to write a law, so we're gonna write one.
I mean, yeah, I think having it consecutive is probably somewhat easier for administration, but admittedly, the administration is gonna be a challenge no matter what the rule is.
What it does is it prevents people from renting all year long. That's one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so yes, that does give me more direction on what next steps are. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is, I'm gonna go back, do more research and stuff, and bring this the next month. So, I'm happy to not close the public hearing and just do the public, I mean, what do you want, what does staff wanna do as far as? Cause then you gotta notice it again for a public hearing again.
I agree to have another one.
But if,
There's an expense to that.
you could continue the public hearing if you think that these changes are.
Right, and that's where I'm kind of going with, because so that we don't have to re-advertise.
So if you keep it open, you have to, you say when to a date certain, you have to continue it to the next regular
For the
meeting.
next regular.
That was not ready yet, you'll have to continue it to the next regular meeting.
But we could close the public hearing, having heard the public's opinion on it,
Right.
and legislate from here.
Yeah, and we could do that too, so I mean.
I'll make a motion to close the public.
Okay. So go ahead with that and close the public hearing, actually, we don't need a vote on that, but if that's the comfort level of everybody else, I'm cool with that. And then we would go on to item number 4.2, which is considered a proposed amendment to the city of Delavan zoning ordinance to create section 23.206, parent 8, parent 5 for short-term rental land uses of residentially zoned properties. Is there a motion? Based on our discussion.
I
I thought you were
to-
just not taking action.
I would move to table until,
We're not gonna take it, but yeah, that's what I was going, wouldn't it be good what Kevin is trying to do here, which is.
there was a
more clarity?
motion, so I table it to a point.
If we table it, does that mean it has to come back in the same form?
No,
We're gonna have further discussion under how it's presented, but then.
I sort of understand where you're coming from.
I'm concerned that-
We have to have another public
no,
hearing.
No, we don't need
for
another
stuff.
public.
no, the clerk is,
Okay,
Good to clarify that, but I think we're good.
so did you make a motion to approve it?
No, I think you were gonna make it.
No, there has to be a motion to act before there's a motion to table, just so we're clear.
Okay,
What you really wanna do is postpone it.
right.
You wanna postpone consideration until another time. You don't really wanna
We
table.
don't. Okay.
Table doesn't mean what people think table means.
Alright.
So what you wanna do is postpone
Okay.
until
Is everyone
some
good?
indeterminate date.
Is that the motion to continue?
Second. I thought there was.
Kevin wasn't making that motion, I don't think.
I'll make the motion.
You can make the motion.
Okay. There's a motion, is there a second?
Motion to postpone till the
Yes.
next meeting?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second?
Sure.
Okay, any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor of that motion signify by stating that. Aye. Opposed, same sign. With that, we will move on to item number 5, which is update on building and zoning related matters. Please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So y'all might have noticed that, Noodles in Qdoba is open, so to invite us to eat. In September, we did end up having, for single family homes, we had a total of 38 single family homes, from the beginning of the year to September. And Terry and I processed, 11 new homes today. And then we've got 6 more, that just got brought in, so, we still have quite a bit of work, and I'm sure most of these homes are over in Harbor Club, Arbor Ridge, and then, Glen Oaks behind the high school, so. And, Geronimo started digging the second hole, for the 277 unit apartment buildings that are out there. And, we'll be bringing their precast walls out, relatively soon also, so.
That's the one behind McDonald's?
Correct.
Okay, that was one of my questions today.
Yeah, I think that, I don't wanna say they were running behind, but I think that they, just with ordering materials and stuff, it slowed them down a little bit, so. You'll start to see progress out there. And if you've driven by Autumn Drive, there's 2 4-unit, apartment buildings that are going up there. They'll probably be under roof, I would think, by the end of this week, so they're starting to build out there. And that's the main things that's going on in my world. I don't know if you guys have specific questions on anything.
Just at Arbor Ridge, they will take care of the soup fence.
Yeah, I did contact them. Actually, in both places, we did get some rain this week, so both Arbor Ridge and Harbor Club. After we got some of the rain, went out and adjusted some of their erosion control to make it better. So.
Yeah, well,
2 questions. The first one, I'm sure is for you, Gene. I had asked you previously about our requirement for screening at Cruise property. Any movement on that?
Yeah, so I do know that I will have to stop in and talk with them. They have not completed that yet. So I will, I'll make a note to do that this week and see if they can get that in before, the season's over with planting.
Is that the farm out there you were talking about with the trailers?
No, the property right there by McDonald. When we approved the
On Phoenix.
expansion of that, we required.
Oh, yes, I do remember that now, yep,
Yeah, and they haven't complied with that.
okay, yeah, I remember that.
Nor have they complied with the elimination of the drive, next to their collision facility, which used to be Bauer.
The second question may be for you, Brian. As you just mentioned, we seem to be a hot property these days. Are we considering thinking about staffing requirements? Ensuring that we'll have adequate staffing requirements to meet all this newfound growth?
Now we're just trying to get positions filled in the public works department, but, no one has said anything yet about a need to increase inspection staff, and frankly, we're about to run out of land at this point unless we start bringing more land or buying land to put into housing.
Good point.
Well, one, that's not the case, but we've approved many subdivisions that have it. at any development.
I would say most of the ones that are available are building.
No, that,
Well, there's two I know that are not doing any movement at all, but
Right.
yeah, they've got to be sold to somebody who's gonna actually do something with it.
so we're not out of property, we're out of developers who are motivated to build in the city of Delavan.
Any other questions?
Like that, they're a little busy.
If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor of adjournment? Signify by saying aye. Aye. Vote. Thanks, everyone.
I think I've got two.
Thank you always for your question.
The only question that I had.
Oh, did I?
No, in my mind.